Hey guys, it's Epic here and welcome back to another episode of Borderlands Breaking News. Guys, we've got a fantastic episode for you today, so before we get into the video, I hate to bug you, but I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like on the video and sub to the channel for more Borderlands Breaking News. Let's get right into it today with a fantastic video indeed. Starting off with the biggest news. I have been asked about this for a while now, and I have not advertised it in the title or the thumbnail just because it's not something I want to make a huge deal about, even though it is a big win. A team has made it in to Borderlands Online. You guys may remember a few months ago that I made a video asking for help to bring Borderlands Online back to life, and well, a team has managed to get in game. Now, this is obviously massive news, but one thing that is important to note is that the game is not in a fully playable state and no build exists for it currently, as that team is taking their time to make sure it is properly working before releasing it. And there is no ETA on when that is going to be, but they are able to get in game with multiple players, and they are able to access numerous aspects of the game. There is a lot that I could say about this, but I think the less I say, the safer it'll be. So all I'm going to say is that this was truly a dream come true. Like, I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but I really do mean that. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who rallied behind me and everybody else involved to try and make this a reality. Borderlands Online has been obtained. We did do it. We were successful. And hopefully in the future I'll have even more to share with you guys that will shed a lot more light on the whole thing. All I need you to do now is pray for me and my safety. Also in the news today, let's talk about Borderlands 4. There is a lot to go over here, but first we're gonna start off on a slightly low note. One of the legendary enhancements has been spotted in Borderlands 4, and while it at first seemed like it was good news, there is some bad news also. So the legendary is called the Exploding Boom Puppy, as you can see on screen, and we can see that it has two perks. The two perks will make it so that on one hand, weapons with Torque license parts have a 50% chance to call down a missile barrage on a nearby enemy when you get a kill, and the other one, Explosive Deception, says that weapons with Torque license parts fire stickies that hit for a bonus 50% damage when they first attach to an enemy. And as we can see the passives there, one of them is SMG Splash Radius. Now this is interesting for a few reasons. The main one is that these perks have been seen on other enhancements in the game already, so a lot of people, including myself, are confused on what actually makes this a legendary and if it's purely just based on how many parts rolled on it, because if that's the case, honestly not a big fan of that. And the other one that was brought up by a bunch of people is the passive on this enhancement, which is SMG Splash Radius. And the criticism here is that once again Gearbox are bloating the passive pool, making it so there are far too many passives to farm, leading to worse RNG for people trying to put a build together. And that instead of just having a Splash Radius passive that encompasses all of the weapons in the game, by splitting it across all of the different weapon types, they are severely hindering RNG. And while you might think this is good because it's more to farm for, we've already seen in Borderlands 3 the effect this actually has, and unfortunately it's a really bad one for farming. So here's hoping Gearbox can take this feedback into account and keep their eye on it so we can get some positive change for the passive system, which a lot of people are not happy is returning in this form. And finally, for today's episode of Borderlands Breaking News, let's talk about the biggest thing, which is that Amon's entire skill tree has been revealed on BiliBili, the Chinese version of YouTube. As you guys know, Chinese creators were given the opportunity to play Borderlands 4, and it just so happens that one of them has gone ahead and got full gameplay of every node in Amon's skill tree. Now, all of the nodes are of course in Chinese, and I'm not going to translate all of them, but what we are going to do is go over the capstones in this video today. But before we do that, let's talk about Amon's passives, because a lot of people have been curious what Amon's passives actually do, and well, this gameplay appears to shed some light on that. It seems that Amon has a unique passive for each tree, all with their own unique icon to symbolize roughly what they do. And we get an example of that with this one here in the green tree, which is seemingly called Double-Edged Blade. And it says that you can press and hold F, not just tapping F, pressing and holding F to throw a twin forged blade, causing cryo melee damage to pass through enemies, and then it will return back to Amon's hands like a boomerang and create a large amount of melee damage on the way to Amon. And so this is very interesting. It looks like there will be a secondary action skill, if you will, that Amon will be able to hold LB or hold F to throw or to cast or whatever it may be instead of just pressing it. And this is actually a very unique take on a passive. I really like that it adds on top of what he already has and expands his kit even more. But let me know what you guys think of it in the comment section down below. Alright, and now let's finally get to the capstones. Now, before I read these out, it is important to know that these have been ran through a translator, and due to there just not being certain words in Chinese, for example, that there is in English and vice versa, the translator is going to get a lot of stuff wrong, but I have tried my best to explain these and take my best guess at what they do so I can connect the dots on there and explain it a little better for you guys. So first off, we're going to be starting off with the red tree here, and we're going to begin with what appears to be called Storm Guillotine. It says press F to wave a giant forged sword and launch waves attacking all enemies passing through it. Every time you hit an enemy, the cooldown of the skill will be restored and the duration will also be restored. It also appears to affect the weapon cooldown time. So very cool there. The next one is Turbulent Lava. The radius of the Blazing Whack, which is like the flaming hammer strike action skill similar to what Clawbringer had in Wonderlands, will increase the well storage damage. After the delay, the fire will pile up onto 3 people, and the fire will cause additional burning damage based on the damage stored by the Blazing Whack impact and distribute the damage to the remaining targets. So I'm not sure what the well storage means there. I'm assuming that's just getting a little mixed up in translation, but either way, the third capstone for this tree is Frostblade. The Blazing Whack is now a Frostblade. Hold down F to wave a giant forged axe, launch forged waves, and cause cryo melee damage. The well freezes through the enemy, and enemies killed by the Frostblade will detonate, causing cryo damage. So that right there is the red tree. Now we're going to be moving on to the blue tree. So once again, just a forewarning here that the translations are not going to be accurate. But first up, we have the Ring of Frost and Fire. The Wall of Fire is now circular, dealing damage to the enemy located in it in the current burning state. It deals cryo damage to enemies leaving or entering it, and friendly projectiles that pass through the wall will gain increased damage and projectile speed. The next one is known as Glacier Mania. Hold down F to wave the Forged Whip, hitting nearby enemies twice in a row and causing cryo ordnance damage, and then slam the ground, generating frozen cracks which will leave a cryo hazard pool, which is just a dot damage pool, for 6 seconds. And then lastly here, we've got Anger Descends from the Sky. Press and hold F to summon a giant forged sword and attack the target enemy, causing damage to all enemies in range. And now to wrap up on all of the capstones, let's talk about the green tree. The first one is known as Flame Boomerang. The double-edged blade can now deal fire melee damage from both directions and has increased what seems like radius. When flying close to the ground, it will leave a trail of fire, which will burn enemies who touch it, cause detonation, or use a flame boomerang to damage the enemy, and it will restore a portion of the cooldown of the skill. So that right there is Flame Boomerang. The next one is Storm Surge. Press and hold F to throw a twin blade, causing shock melee damage on impact. When the storm surges on impact, it will generate a forging storm for a period of time, which will dot enemies. And then lastly here, we've got Snow Hammer. Press and hold F to throw the iron bell, which will cause cryo melee damage to nearby enemies when it hits, ricocheting between them up to 3 times at once. If no ricochet is found, the hammer will cause additional damage to the target it hits before exploding. Every time a detonation is triggered, an additional ricochet will be added. And so there we have it. That is every capstone for Amon that was revealed. Now, obviously, like I said, the translation is off there, and a lot of that is going to probably be incorrect information. And for that, obviously, I apologize, but I'm not fluent in Mandarin just yet, at least. But it does give us a good idea of what these capstones are going to do. And it's crazy to me that it sounds like they almost completely change how these skills work. It does not sound just like a tiny little change that potentially adds 10% damage or 30% damage. It looks like it legitimately changes how these action skills work, which brings a lot more reason to having less skill points, because these capstones aren't just little stat sticks like maybe they were in other games. Now they are completely changing these skills up to make action skills feel more transformative as you progress. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Borderlands Breaking News. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video and let me know what capstone sounded best to you. But until next time, take it easy. Thank you for watching. As always, it's deeply appreciated, and I'll check you all later.